problem. So you guys, did you say you started yesterday, the no competition in the MLS?
It starts tonight, like at 11 p.m. It's all going to go away for real comp, the real
Yeah.
comp MLS.
Okay.
How about you in Ohio and your MLS?
August 1st.
Okay. Yeah, we got a big head start. They wanted a month, I guess, to iron out any wrinkles and make sure they were compliant. So I didn't expect that. And we only found out late last week.
Oh,
You
geez.
know, it's coming, but I just wasn't ready to,
Yeah.
I guess we'll never be ready. Maybe.
Well, and I really feel like there's going to be modifications as we're working through this.
Mhm.
I don't think this is going to be the end all be all, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it's a moving target. We don't even know what we don't know right now
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
how things will go.
That's why I feel like, so I have been to many classes on all of this stuff and did the ABR course and all of that. And it's like, I kind of feel like we're wasting a lot of time and energy talking about the what ifs until we're in it and figuring it out because it's all speculation at this point. So I
Yeah,
guess, I guess,
I feel like and that's what I've kind of been. I feel like there's a lot of people who've just been on full on panic
mhm.
about this change and like, what are they going to do? What are we going to do? How's this going to go? And I mean, obviously this is a big change for everybody. Our brokers here in Michigan have been they did a training yesterday. They did a training today, kind of talking about all the stuff, answering questions. We actually have somebody who was asking a good question in our group chat a minute ago that we'll bring up later. But there's a lot of questions that we have to figure out. Like, well, I'll bring it up now since we were talking about it. But somebody said, what happens if I'm out of town and Julie's going to show houses for me? How does that work? Like, who's the buyer agency agreement with then, Julie or me? And it's a whole thing. There's not really a plan for that.
No,
So,
that's a very good point. I'm wondering if you couldn't do the like the 1 day or single property agreement and on there right, Nicole is showing on behalf of.
well, and Skylar just made a good point. He said, I thought the agreement was between the buyer and the broker, technically, because the broker is the one who pays us.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
is it not through but we're putting our names on these broker buyer
Yeah,
agency
and we're a
agreements.
designated agency, so just because we're in the same brokerage, EXP is huge, right? So it could be anybody.
Jump in real
Right.
quick. I know
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
our buyer agency agreement says that in it, the verbiage allows the supervisor broker to change the designated broker. There's a one line that says that it can change the designated broker. So that's why I was a little bit confused with it. So.
Well, so why don't we just get right into this? So Nikki, why don't you play the first little slide here for us and we'll kind of jump into things. And this is going to be kind of an open forum towards the end. We want to have everyone kind of talk and, a lot of people are in different states, different brokerages. So there's going to be a lot of different things kind of happening. So we're going to give our best explanation and how we're going to kind of tackle this. And we're all in this together and we're all going to figure this out. Eventually, it'll be second nature to us. We just have to kind of get through the hump. Just like, before we had, when COVID was happening, nobody knew what to do then. And we figured it out, didn't we? Right. So this is just something new that we're going to have to figure out. And at any point in this, Nikki's going to be doing a lot of this because she's taken extensive classes on all of this, but we definitely want to open this up. So if anyone has questions or if they want to put something in the chat, we can stop Nikki and have a conversation about this. This first slide, August 17th, like we were just saying, one of our MLSs here in Michigan just tonight is going to be removing the commission field from the MLS and kind of like iron out some of the problems that we're going to have with this. And things are going to change. So, Nikki, do you want to go ahead and get
Yep.
started with things, and we'll just take off from here?
Sure. Okay, so August 17th, that is the NAR date when all of the MLSs have to implement this. And, like Real Comp is implementing it now. I'm part of Norris MLS and on August 1st. Now, we already started implementing this, but that's when they're going to start seeing fines and whatever else if you're not complying with this. So the first part is when I was doing the ABR certification, they wanted to go over common mistakes that, real estate professionals make concerning this contract with potential buyers. So what I thought was very interesting, let me move this guy right here. Okay. So one of the common mistakes is you're already acting like a buyer's rep without clarifying the relationship. So that's saying, you're showing them houses and acting as their agent without having a contract with them designating you as their agent. Solely because they don't want to pressure anybody into signing anything, which is the next issue. It says avoiding discussing a representation agreement because they don't want to pressure a buyer into signing anything. This is something we're all going to have to get over, because it is mandatory. And I know in the state of Ohio, it's going to be Ohio license law. So you're going to face severe fines if you're not having them sign something right out the get-go. Another issue was they're relying on their state's default agency position. So that is just your agency disclosure. Well, as we know, that's not good enough anymore. Assuming that the buyers know you're on their side. What they're trying to eliminate is the implied representation. It needs to be in writing that you are their agent. You're providing this service, and as a result, you're going to be compensated X amount and by who. And so I personally feel like this is a great thing for our industry. If buyers should have that so that they know, hey, I have this specific professional that is going to be working with me. And I think it's very important that they also know who is paying for that. So if it's the sellers that's paying for their buyer's fee, or if it's them. Another common mistake is they delay signing the buyer's representation until the buyer is ready to write an offer. And that makes sense to me. I can understand why an agent would want to do that, because I'm sure they're getting backlash from the buyer. Like, well, I'm not writing an offer yet. I just want to see the property. Anyone can show me the property. And I feel like we're going to get a lot of that until every single agent is routinely educating their buyers that the first step needs to be outlining their agreement with the buyer.
And I know that like in our
Okay.
again,
Yeah.
Oh, Nikki, can you hear? Sorry, you're kind of choppy. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on over there. Your internet's not cooperating very well. But what our broker was just saying yesterday was that they want us to use the digital signature systems for our buyer agency agreements because it has the timestamp. And I have a feeling that they're going to be looking at these timestamps and potentially even going and looking at your showing time or your requests and seeing if they match. Now, I don't know if that's going to be like an audit or if they're going to be cracking down on people right away. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but if they catch you not like showing homes without this buyer agency agreement form, then you're not going to get paid commission on that, on that deal. So it's just going to be really important to make sure that these things are done early on. So Nikki, this plays in perfectly with this next slide.
And the last meeting that I attended with our board, we were told that we will be fined $100 if we cannot produce an exclusive buyer representation agreement if they request one. So, beware that if you're going to be the agent that's like, no, I'm not going to have anything signed until, we go to submit an offer, you're not only are you doing every other agent a disservice, but you're definitely putting yourself at risk of not getting paid, being fined. And I think if we start seeing a lot of this, there could be some penalties with, your license, but that's just my opinion. So what they really wanted to hammer home in the ABR class was that buyer consultations just became more important than ever. I've always done buyer consultations, but I'm making sure that it's a non-negotiable now. So things to discuss in these buyer consults are going over that exclusive buyer agreement, letting them know what does it mean, letting them know how long does it last, because you do have the option to terminate it if they don't want to work with you anymore. Explaining to them why they have to sign it, because a lot of buyers are not going to understand because it's new. So until they get accustomed to doing this and it becomes the norm, they're going to ask, why do they have to sign? Also letting them know what options do they have. So, we do have the option of doing the single property showing. It doesn't have to be the exclusive. So if that makes the buyer feel more comfortable in the beginning, let them know that that is an option. And then as they feel comfortable with you, I'm sure they're going to want to do the exclusive. But, letting them know that you're not pressuring them, but you're educating them and letting them know this is required, this is the law, and I have to do this. So it's a great time to showcase your value proposition. And if you don't have your value proposition figured out for your presentation, it's a great time to work on it. So knowing what your unique value proposition is going to be extremely important. So it basically what it is, it's your market distinction and the services that you offer to others that make you different than others. Why should they hire you? So there are 4 elements to form the foundation of your value proposition. The first one's education. So, have you done specialized training like the ABR designation in the business? Are you, what classes have you taken? Are you more educated than, Joe over here that just got licensed and has no idea what's going on? Expertise, educating them on the knowledge of the market and process, plus, what are your negotiation skills? What kind of a communicator are you? You are trying to sell yourself and your value to these clients so that they obviously feel more comfortable with you. Experience, what have you learned on the job? These buyers may have never purchased or gone through, the sale. However, I mean, I've probably sold over 200 homes. So knowing, hey, I've done this 200 plus times, I obviously am going to know more than somebody that just started, or, you that have never went through this experience before. This is why you shouldn't be unrepresented. And then the last part, I can't even read it. It doesn't even essence. Okay, so who you really are. So this is a great way to demonstrate your unique value. Is your niche just first-time home buyers? Do you specialize in relocation? How can you really use that to your advantage in this buyer consultation? Okay, so if you're like me, I initially struggled with how to initiate that buyer consult. Somebody calls you and is like, hey, I found this house on Zillow. I really want to go look at it. So it's kind of pumping the brakes on that and letting them know this is a script that was part of the ABR class. So it says, our session today won't take long. I usually say meeting. Hey, our meeting today won't take long, probably just 20 minutes or so, but it's extremely important. We'll be going over what's important to you in your new home. answer your questions about buying, go over the home buying process, get to know each other a little bit, and determine if we're the right fit. So then also explaining to them, you know, my job is to find you the right home at the right price, at the right terms, and get your transaction to the closing table. So it's giving them a quick overview of why we need to meet, especially if they haven't bought a home in 10 years. The buying process has completely changed, and it is constantly changing. There's new forms, addenda. I mean, there's a lot constantly changing. So it's educating them so that they understand, hey, I probably shouldn't do this myself. And then how to break the ice. So initially I started implementing this probably about a month ago, and I was struggling with trying to figure out how to explain this to buyers. And so literally I was just like, okay, I'm sure you've heard about the NAR lawsuit. There's a lot of confusion around it. So I would like to start by, let's discuss that first. Let's get the legal stuff out of the way and explain, you know, I will be working for you. Here are the disclosures that the state requires us to give you. And I've printed them all out so that they can look at them. And then I let them know we can go over the buyer agreement in just a few minutes, but it's important for you to know that I'm your agent. And as such, this is providing your value now. I put your interests ahead of everyone else's, my own, as well as any sellers whose homes you may be interested in. So the only exception in letting them know would be if you're acting as a dual agent. Some brokerages don't allow dual agency. So, you know, this would be the point where you would discuss to them what is dual agency, and explain what's going to happen if that situation arises. Break it down. I created this handout, and I felt like it really helped buyers kind of get the idea without going into too much detail. So explaining to them, a customer does not have a signed agreement with an agent, and a client does have a signed agreement with an agent. So there are some things that if you're a customer, an agent cannot disclose to you, and if you're a client, they can disclose to you. And it's letting them know, you know, if you are not a client, we can't give you our advice on what you should offer for a house. We can't share with you any details that we know, like, hey, the seller's going through a divorce, they need a quick sale. We can't tell you any of that. That is pertinent information, confidential, that we can only disclose with our clients. So it really puts them at a disadvantage to be a customer versus a client. And once they see kind of them versus each other, they're like, well, why would I want to be a customer? So I've included this into my the buyer's consultation. And then I go over, and this is for Ohio, obviously, this is the exclusive buyer's agreement. So I
Nikki, hold on. It hasn't changed yet. Nikki, sorry, your internet's screwy and it has not changed to the next screen yet. And you're really choppy right now. I still see
it's showing. Let's see.
There. Okay, now it's there. Now I can see that.
Okay. Okay. So this is the exclusive buyer agreement, and I walk them through it so that they understand what they are signing. And I let them know that we have to indicate compensation in here. However, I will be doing my due diligence for any house that they want to see, finding out if that seller is providing any compensation for their buyer's agent. And if they're not, they will be made aware ahead of time. So what I have found is buyers don't want to be surprised. They don't want to fall in love with a house and then find out, oh, I'm now going to owe an additional $5,000, what have you, for your commission. They want to know that ahead of time. So I've been treating it like for sale by owner clients. We have to have the seller, you know, with for sale by owner, sign off before we show the property who is paying their commission. I've been treating this the exact same way. If a seller says where they're not contributing anything for the buyer's agent, then I let the client know and they can decide if they want to, proceed with viewing the house or not. I would say majority of the time they don't want to, and that is their decision. I'm not making it for them. But again, you have to be transparent.
I think my only concern.
Then I also show them.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? The internet, it's like real slow, I think,
Yes.
on your side. The internet's dying over there. It's struggling. So I think my only concern is, and I think a lot of people's concern, and we could talk about this towards the end too, is what happens when there's a client who wants to see a house. They love it. It's like the most perfect house for them, but the buyer or the seller is not offering out compensation. And now we have to explain to them, hey, I know you don't really have the money for this, but like, how are we getting paid? Like, what are we going to do? Are they going to be, going out on their own and saying, okay, well, we're just going to write our own offer on this property. We're going to represent ourselves on that one. Or what do we do besides potentially writing it in as concessions on an offer and seeing if they'll accept it? Like, we have to have that conversation. We have to do that role playing, I think, too, to practice how we're going to take that objection. And I think, Nikki, do you have a objection handler for that, or how you're going to handle that, or how you have handled that?
So I have not had any issues with buyers not understanding or signing the exclusive agreement saying that they will pay my commission if it's not offered. And so they know up front that, hey, you're responsible to pay this. So I feel like they've been conscientious at homes that they're looking at, assuming going into it that they're going to have to pay it. And then, if they don't have to pay it, they're like, great, this is extra money. So I haven't had to handle any objections. It's not just a case by case situation like, hey, we have the opportunity to work with you on this one because they're offering compensation, and we're not going to work with you on this one because they're not. They are contractually obligated. If they buy anything, it has to be through you, and you are going to be compensated, period. Unless they're doing this one-time showing agreement, which is only for one specific property. Then they're not on the hook for anything past that. Does that make sense?
Here's a interesting thing that just happened to me. So I have a client who I'm under contract with. They're buying a property with me. We signed a buyer agency agreement. We were under contract on the property. Inspection was done. Appraisal was already like scheduled for the next day. And I get a call from the lender saying, hey, I just got another pre-approval request for your client's wife, who is also on my buyer agency agreement. And they now want to buy another property and they're using another realtor. Mm-hmm. So I went to the brokers and I'm like, what do I do here? Because we have a buyer agency agreement. They both signed with me, and it's open-ended. Mm-hmm. It has like my county on it that I'm working in. It has our price point, it has all that stuff in there. But yet they went through another realtor who signed another buyer agency agreement with them. And the brokers were kind of like, there's not really a whole lot you could do. So even if you have that buyer agency agreement, like I could fight it. I could take it to that other realtor and say, hey, listen, I already have an agreement with them, but it's tough. And I will say, this is the caveat to this whole thing. These clients came to me after they looked at this house with that other agent, and then said they didn't want to write an offer with that agent and wrote it with me. So had they have had that buyer agency agreement before, then maybe I wouldn't have even been a part of this whole conversation. But it's just, you can't control what a buyer's going to do. And it's like, I have no idea why they went to this other realtor to buy another property. I assume, I guess it's a friend of theirs, but I don't know why I even came into it. You know what I mean? So it's like a weird, very weird situation. But even with buyer agency agreements, it's not like they are necessarily held to having to use you. They could you know, our document even says in Michigan, ours even says, do they have another buyer agency agreement in play? Yes or no. And are they buyer or seller? So, you know, if I'm looking in Toledo and Michigan, I can have two separate buyer agency agreements. Or if I'm looking in Washtenaw County where I live, and I'm also looking in Wayne County, I could potentially have two separate agents. So it is a little tricky. So it's not necessarily a guarantee that if that person writes an offer, you're going to get paid.
Well, and it's basically protecting you. So one of the issues that I see here is I don't think anything's going to come of buyers signing multiple agency agreements, because the agreement is between the broker and the client. So the broker would have to sue them. No broker is going to do that. But what our board has advised us to do is, you know, one of the first questions is asking if they've seen houses with an agent previously. Who is the agent and did they sign anything? And then reaching out to that agent before showing them houses to confirm that they don't have anything signed. So I feel like it's flawed, obviously, but again, might be one of those things that we see changing as we, you know, get further into this and it develops. But it's a lot of us doing a ton of due diligence for the client that could totally be lying to us.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. You never know. You know, I asked this guy if he had a buyer agency agreement or if he had been working with another realtor, and he told me no. I thought he went to an open house. I didn't know that he even looked at the house with a agent until later. Okay, somebody in the comments said, are these slides going to be downloaded? My dot loop is wonky and does not want to allow me to print correctly. I'm not sure what that's about, but okay. Go ahead.
So all of these forms are in our dot loop. So, you know, and I'm in Ohio, so you guys may have different Michigan forms. A lot of these are EXP forms. Then I also included the unrepresented purchaser disclosure. So this one's extremely important to cover your own liability that, you know, say this person does not want to be represented. And, you know, for me, I'm not going to show somebody a house that doesn't want to be represented. I know that there's probably agents, probably new agents that are eager to try to get clients that may, in hopes that they can, you know, convince this person to then work exclusively with them. If a purchaser wants to be unrepresented,
Shoot, I think we lost her again. We'll give it a second. Well, hopefully we didn't lose her completely. Well, so I'm not sure where she was going with that one.
Yeah, while we're waiting for her, I don't understand how we can show a home to an unrepresented buyer. Don't we need to have a buyer broker agreement in place? So I
Well,
guess
and this might be something that's for specific. Oh, yep, we lost her. For Ohio specifically.
Could be.
That part I don't know. You know, I also don't know if we can show houses as unrepresented now, because, you know, like Julie, like when you sometimes do that, like dual agency, and not really dual agency, but you're doing both sides of the transaction, but one is considered unrepresented.
Oh, true. It's not your client. It's not your client. They
So
must, if they came to an open house. I mean, you're not supposed to do a showing with an unrepresented buyer, taking them to the property. But if you held an open house, you certainly
how does that work? How does the open house work now? What if you have an unrepresented buyer come to your open
house? It doesn't
house?
apply because you're not representing them. You're just putting the deal together. You're
and
not
what happens if Sally comes to your open house and decides that they want to write an offer, but you don't have a buyer agency agreement prior to them actually seeing the home. So how does that work?
Then
You know,
they would just sign an agency disclosure that you represent the seller, just like it is now. You just can't go off and show them more homes without a buyer broker agreement.
okay.
Yeah, it's all so confusing.
I know.
But so,
I feel like there's so many questions that we have to figure out.
yeah,
Hey, Nicole,
Yes.
this is Angie. In our Kentucky State meeting this morning, they had a NARS representative come and talk to us, and the open house situation came up. And she's an attorney and does something with EXP, but she also is employed by NAR. So I don't know where all of her designations lie. But anyway, she said that when we have an open house, um, that we are to maybe put together a flyer that will say, if you are not represented and you're looking at this house, please see the listing agent that is hosting the open house today. And that we basically, will say something to the effect of, you're free to look around or whatever. If you don't have representation and are going to need a representation for this home, we probably need to meet afterwards, after the open house is over, and you would need to sign something. You can represent yourself, but they said that it would be important that pretty quickly after that open house that we did get something signed, to even enter any kind of negotiation talks. And she just said that that was, probably going to be the standard. But she recommended that everyone have like basically a flyer that if you give them MLS sheets or seller's disclosure during your open house, that you also pass that out as long as they know, and that you can have conversations with them while they're in the home. But if they are interested in putting in an offer, they're going to either need to meet with you afterwards or prior to submitting anything, unless they decide to go somewhere else for representation. So I don't know if that helps or not, but that's what she recommended we do, was a flyer.
Interesting. All right. Thanks, Angie.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that, I think we're going to have to figure out a lot of this. Let's see, Chris just said, if they represent themselves and we can't write a contract for them or provide a blank one. And that's where, that's another thing, like maybe Nikki can talk on that about how she, like going back to her unrepresented buyer. Because Nikki, you cut out partway through unrepresented buyer.
Yep.
But what happens when, like, for instance, I showed, well, I guess I would have had to have them sign something to show the house. I was going to say, I showed a house the other day to a investor who did not want to work with a buyer's agent. He only wanted to go to the listing agent. So, I would still then have to have a buyer agency agreement for that property, even though this is the other conversation that has to be had, because he was like, oh, well, if we want to put an offer on this house, we go through you, it'll save the seller some money. And I said, it doesn't save the seller any money. Like, this is a very popular misconception that I do not have to reduce that commission for the for you to come through this house if you want to put an offer in. And he was like, so wait, so you're saying, and he explained, said it all again. And I was like, yeah, I don't have to change my commission that I've already negotiated with them. It does not save them a penny for you to go through me. And now I would represent them. And if you're coming in unrepresented, I can't give you any sort of negotiation power. I can't help you. I can't advise you on anything. You would be coming in this on your own. So it would behoove you to have your own buyer agent through this whole process. And he was like, oh, I had no idea. I'm like, well, now you do.
That's why most people come through open houses, to try to go to you directly. So Nikki, that form, is that what that's for like an open house where they're acknowledging that they're not represented?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. So they're saying, I choose not to be represented. I'm doing this on my own. Then it needs to be stated.
I would like a copy of that. I didn't know something like that
the next
existed.
part, Yep, I believe it's in, let me look real quick. I thought that
think
that
we-
one was
I don't know that we have that form.
And I've never
from,
seen that one. In fact,
Yeah,
I don't, is it really truly necessary? I mean, for, I guess it's just for them, because we don't really need it for the broker. We just need
will-
the agency disclosure stating that they acknowledge that you are acting in the capacity of the seller, the seller's agent, listing agent.
got it. I don't know why this won't present full screen. I have no idea.
I know, yeah,
But
still-
I do have,
side.
I do have the forms that I can send or drop in our group that you guys can see them in person and kind of know what to look for in your own files for it. This one right here, I feel like is a good chart. It was part of the ABR class where you're educating the buyer on what your value. So exactly what you're doing. So you're finding them suitable property, showing them the property. So you find out features of benefits, analyze.
Oh,
They're not
Nikki,
going to be able to.
Nikki, it's cutting out really bad.
They're doing construction, and so it's got to be part of it.
Possibly, yeah,
Let me-
it's cutting out. Like it's very hard to hear what you're saying. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let me see if I can pop on my phone and pull it up. That might be better since that's cellular. I'm gonna mute myself and see if I can't get on there.
Okay. And I can try to share screen again and see if because you said you're having trouble sharing. Let me try and see if I can get it to go this time. Let's see. Let me find it. Oh, I think I had closed it out because I was in another screen. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry about this. And we know how Canva always is when we are on Zoom too.
It's trying to let me in on my phone.
Oh, hold on. Sorry.
That's okay. All right, I'm gonna see if this is any better.
All right.
And then
And I will share. Give me 1 sec. Sorry. Out of some tabs so we can try to make this better. All right.
Yep.
Nikki, can you see the question in the
Let's see here. Oh. Maybe.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Every time it's so slow.
Okay, so it says if the seller does offer compensation still, where are you thinking to post what compensation is being offered if we can't in the MLS? So our MLS board did tell us that there will be, and I have it in the presentation, there will be a section with a drop-down menu that says, are the sellers offering concessions? And it'll say yes or no. And then we can post, from my understanding, anywhere we want except for the MLS what that compensation is. So if we want to post it on social media, we can. If we want to put it on our own personal website, we can. It just can't be part of the MLS.
See, and we cannot do that here in Michigan. We are told that we will be fined if we post it anywhere at all. Like the only way you are able to get that information is by calling the agent, texting the agent, or emailing the agent. You cannot put it on any other thing. It's considered a violation.
Okay. So, and that's something that varies from board to board, but they kind of told us, our board told us, we just as part of the lawsuit, it cannot be offered through the MLS. And it can't be, you can't have it in any of the agent remarks or anything like that.
Yeah, I think this is going to be something that you're going to have to rely on your board and your brokerage to tell you what to do. Because otherwise, you just need to protect yourself, right? CYA. You need to make sure that you are checking with your board and your rules. Don't necessarily go off of what we're saying. You need to follow what your brokerage and your board is saying. Nikki, this literally won't let me do anything on my computer right now. Canva is like completely frozen. I don't know what.
See here, then I was able to bring it up. In the chat, there was, somebody had said, I was thinking about.
Oh, now I can't. Nikki, I can't hear you at all. You just muted yourself.
There you go. That was on accident. I was trying to swipe. Somebody had put in the chat that they were thinking about saying, text this number for more information. I think that that's a great idea. I don't personally see any violations with that because, again, that would be the agent reaching out specifically to the other agent or the buyer, whatever. You're not putting it specifically out there publicly.
Yeah, I mean, and that might be a way. I know we had one of our agents who's very busy agent and said there's no way that I'm going to be able to talk to every single agent that wants to see this house. So maybe it's creating a shortcut in your phone that it's, a quick blurb that you send out to anybody who messages you. But one of the things that they said specifically at our broker meeting was it is your job as the listing agent. It is your fiduciary duty to talk to every single agent who wants to see that home. Like it is your job to figure that part out, whether you're, getting the information, texting it or whatever, you still have to put that information out there.
Yep. Now, do you have me with screen share enabled now since I rejoined?
I don't know. I don't know what is happening. This thing beyond frustrating.
Because when I hit share on it doesn't.
No, I just made you co-host again. Sorry, everybody. This is so frustrating. When neither one of our internets are working properly, it's amazing.
Right. Well, I can still go over it here. Okay, so, and I will include this as well. If you have not already established a worksheet for your buyer consultation of like specific questions you should be asking, I have one that I can share with you. But basically part of this worksheet, again, once you went through all the legal stuff and letting them know what needs signed and all of that, then you can get into the nitty gritty of, are they in a lease? When is the lease up? Do they have to sell before they buy? What is it exactly are they looking for? How many bedrooms, how many baths? And so I let them know as we're filling that out, what I'm going to do with that information. So once we're done, I'm then going to set them up on a home search. They're going to get auto emails from me, but this is why I'm asking them these questions. So, and I can share that, but it's, the worksheet is very helpful, especially if you're a new agent and you haven't done it before. So what are some facts about all of this? So what we do know is that MLS participants may not receive compensation for services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed upon in the buyer agency. So if you put 2% on there, but the buyer's agent is offering 3%, you can only accept 2%. You can't accept more. So I've been going in and just putting 3% because that's the max I will ever charge my buyer. However, if a buyer's or if a compensation is only offered and say it's 2.5%, now we have a 0.5% difference. So your buyer would be required to pay that 0.5% difference. If you don't want to charge them the difference, you have to then sign another form stating that, you know, I forget what it's called, but basically that they don't owe you that difference. You're reducing your commission. It's an inducement. I think the inducement form is what our board had said. So they're wanting to know, hey, if you're not charging this person that 3%, why? And you have to sign off on it. Otherwise, your buyer is required to pay the remainder of whatever percentage you put in that contract. Sellers can offer concessions on MLS. So, you know, they can say in that drop down menu, yes, we're offering concessions. No, we're not. And they can go towards whatever they want. Now, in my opinion, where the fault is in the concessions is we know if we're having multiple offers, a seller's not going to offer concessions for anything. Typically they don't have to because they have other offers that are not asking for any. So, you know, I'm glad that the VA has decided to allow concessions to be used towards buyer's agents. I personally don't think it's still going to be very helpful, in my opinion. We know that compensations moved off the MLS. We've already discussed that. And we need to really hit home that all of our commissions are negotiable. So that is, again, why we're in this NAR lawsuit, is because the sellers did not, they say they did not understand that commissions are negotiable. They were just told, you know, you have to pay this if you're going to work with me. And I mean, you can set your own commissions, obviously, but we have to let them know that it can be negotiated.
They said in our meeting yesterday that we have to have a line now. And Julie, did they say they're going to be redoing our listing agreement? But they put in here, the quote is, buyer commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. And we're supposed to have that, even though our purchase or our listing agreements did have, like, you're putting your full commission, and then there's a whole other line that says you're offering out buyer agency commission to, or, you know, broker commission to another.
You do, but I don't think anywhere on that exclusive right to sell does it ever say it's negotiable. So I guess they want that in writing, because it's also on the buyer broker representation agreement for the buyer.
And this
State
says
the
it
same
needs to be on
thing.
the listing and purchase agreement, which is weird.
Purchase agreement as well, because it says that this buyer broker representation agreement that they prefer us to use, it's on there.
Well, maybe they're referring to a different one, but like to the old one, but it says they want it on the listing and purchase agreement in order to be compliant.
Yeah. Now remember, we still have till August 17th, right? The only thing that's happening right now for some of us is that compensation's going away on our MLSs, but we still have a month to sort this out, you know, and this, you know, when you really start thinking about it, all these questions arise, and it's going to be a work in progress. Again, it's going to be a moving target all the way along, but we need to know what we're supposed to do.
I think we should just, as realtors, we should just come up with like codes, like A is 3%, B is 2%, like, and we can just put that in big letters, like
the realtor remarks. Yeah.
Hey,
Like,
Nicole.
Yeah.
I was going to tell you a couple of other things that she said. She said when we go into a listing appointment that we really should prepare our clients that, yes, we do recommend you do the standard 3% or whatever. However, if this were to go into a multiple offer situation or whatever, that could be written in a contract to, they may not only have to pay 2%, because some realtor writing a contract in a multiple offer situation may be willing to take less to help those folks get a home. So you don't want to get hung up on that number as much as letting them know that, you know, they probably are going to ask for some sort of compensation in their concessions.
Mhm.
And, you know, it could be up to 3, it could be less if you got into a multiple situation, because they might use that as, like, you know, another advantage to taking that offer. So
Right.
she's like, you don't really want to get hung up on those numbers, but other than just saying, you know, you might lose, there may be some agents that if you're not willing to offer anything, that, you know, may choose not to show your home or
Right.
whatever. So that was the one thing she said, not to get hung up in the numbers. The other thing, she said that there are a lot of states, and we occasionally do it here in Kentucky, but you'll see something pop up on our MLS, like if you could get a house under contract and close by a certain date, that the seller is going to offer an additional $1,000 bonus. Or there are sometimes with builders. And she said, so when you get those buyer agreements signed, if you are a state that does a lot of bonuses, you might also want to include that, because if it's not included in your buyer broker agreement, you're done at 3% or 2% or whatever it is you put on there.
So are we
So
supposed to put on there something like, are we supposed to add in there that, you know, bonus compensation maybe in addition to compensation? Like, how do they want that worded?
she didn't say how to word it, but she said, because I guess there was somebody in there. I don't know if they were in Ohio or Indiana, because it was our Kentucky meeting. But she said that they do a lot of that, and a lot of builders will do stuff. Um, and so she said, make sure you have that written. Or she said, you can go back with an EXP and default to that one time. She said, you know, even if you have over here that you're their realtor, the multi, that you can show any property and they have hired you, the buyer broker agreement. She said you could go in and actually, like, it's basically like us writing an addendum or an amendment. She said, now you're not going to be able to do that on straight concessions and commissions. But she said you could do that if it was like a builder and they were like, okay, we're making a, you know, we've decided now not to buy a single family residence. We want to build, that you can do a one-time agreement and get into all the specifics of that and then have them sign that. She said
Well,
she feels like people are going to abuse that.
and I was just thinking too, like when a buyer is offering out additional bonuses and stuff, that's typically just going straight to the seller anyway. It's not really getting reflected in our commission.
She said it's going to make a difference on some balance sheets. And she said, so depending on how they offer it. And so I don't know. I'm just saying we could, in certain situations, use the one-time agreement basically as an amendment.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
can't do it like if you told someone you take 2.5 and then, you know, a seller's giving you 3, you can't go up and down, you know, like everybody knows that. But she said there are going to be situations where that one time will be used basically like an amendment.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah. Can you see the screen now?
Yeah, it's small, but I think we can all see it enough that it'll work.
Okay. Well, and I'll post it in our group so everyone will have all the slides. So basically they're indicating that there's 4 ways for a buyer's agent to get paid. So one, you know, share of the listing broker commission, which is what we're all used to. Concessions from seller to buyer as a credit at closing. So we would see that on the settlement statement. Seller to buyer's broker at closing. That would also be on the settlement statement, and then buyer to broker. So that would be obviously the buyer paying for their own representation. So what happens when you have a buyer that calls and just wants to see a property ASAP? So I've heard a lot of this with people that buy leads, and they don't want to meet in person for a buyer consultation first. They just want you to meet them at the house and they want you to show it. So what I do is I use this opportunity to send them the MLS sheet and the disclosures prior to scheduling the showing. And with that, I also send them the exclusive agreement with the following email. So in the email, small, so I'm going to read it to you. I basically just say, you know, please find attached all of the information on the properties you've expressed interest in. I've also attached our exclusive buyer agency agreement. We are now required to have this signed before showing any properties to buyers. I let them know that I'll also share it in dot loop so they can electronically sign, but now they know what to be out on the lookout for. I let them know that this agreement ensures that I will be fully dedicated to them, helping them find their dream home. It means that they have my undivided attention, expertise, resources, all of that at their disposal. So it's ultimately saving them time and effort. Plus, it ensures that they have a committed advocate working on their behalf. I let them know that if a seller does not offer buyer agent compensation, that they will be required to do so, and that I'll make them aware as we are seeing homes if a seller is not offering that, so that they're aware ahead of time, and let them know that I will do my very best to get that fee covered by the sellers on their behalf. So I tell them, you know, when they're ready to embark on this journey and see homes, this will need to be signed before I can show them. And I've even went as far as saying, I have to supply this to the listing agent. They require it. And some listing agents have, and some have not. They just want to see some sort of agreement, whether they're not represented, whether they are, if it's a single showing, what have you. So in doing that, I have been able to get them signed. A couple of them, it took a while until they found something that they actually wanted to go see. They weren't, you know, signing it right off the rip. They wanted to be able me to send them the info on the houses, the MLS sheets, the disclosures, whatever. And then they went ahead and signed it. So with this, it says NAR settlement changes. This is from our board. So it goes over everything that I basically just talked about. It's saying that the commission fields are removed, dual rate fields are removed, all of that. And this may vary based on your MLS. But the question that I kept getting is, what happens if you don't have a agreement signed? So number one, you could be fined. We will be fined $100 if we cannot produce the agreement within 24 hours. And Nicole, you had mentioned that EXP said you won't get paid, correct?
So our state broker, again, you know, maybe your state broker is different, but my state broker said that they want us to use the electronic system that timestamps everything. So then if we, you know, put an offer in on a property and we did not have that signed, there is a chance that we likely would not get paid. So we need to make sure that we have every buyer agency agreement signed prior to showing any homes with that person.
Got it.
So I had a question quick.
Yeah.
So you don't want a wet signature on like a paper copy, you want to do it through the email?
So they will accept ink copies, but they are saying it's an extra layer of protection for you, that if let's say your buyer says, I never signed that, I didn't do that, you can say, hey, look, actually on this day at this time you did sign it, just to, you know, keep it as one extra layer of protection. But they will take ink copies.
If you do a wet signature, I think that I would just suggest dating it and time stamping it by yourself so that you're covering yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this slide just shows, you know, our MLS is letting us know the new fields that are going to be, you know, in the MLS now. So concessions in price, concessions in price type, whether it's a dollar amount or percentage. Will the seller consider concessions? Yes or no? This should be able to give you, if they say no, then to me, that automatically tells me they're not going to be giving anything towards buyer's agent. That maybe just what your buyers need to know, yes or no. If they don't have the money, why waste the time trying to convince them to offer it?
Right.
So I feel like it'll take some getting used to, but there's gonna be a way that it's not gonna be as burdensome that we're gonna have to call every agent for every single showing. I think we'll be able to see if it says yes, okay, then we need to call. If it says no, we don't have to waste our time.
Julie, do you know how they're doing it for ours?
Yeah, so we're offering those concessions fields as well are being added. We should be able to see them tomorrow. I just had a thought though that that's not a mandatory field to fill out, I would guess, because if you are indeed offering buyer agency compensation, then you're going to say no to that, right? If it's a mandatory field, you're not going to offer both. So I think it's an optional field. So I don't know if that would really tell you anything by just looking at the listing.
Are we just changing the verbiage from
Yeah,
commissions
to
to
concession,
compensation
because
So
like
the-
in this market, right, we're going over list price for the most part, most listings are. So so many thoughts are running through my head. Because what's to
Right.
keep the seller from creating their own kind of special commission they want to offer? So I call the listing agent to ask about compensation and they say, oh, well, my seller decided that they're going to offer 2%. But if the asking price goes whatever, X percent over or 10,000 over, then they, there could be what's to keep them from being completely creative on what their compensation would be. I mean, we can't expect to think that it's going to be all or nothing. I'm either offering you the full 3 or it's just going to be 0, or I'm just going to do concessions, and we just, as listing agents, need to encourage our sellers to, in order to drive these bidding wars and get the most eyeballs, we need to remain true to this 3% model, even though it is negotiable. So I don't want everyone to think that, oh, it's going to 0% on August 17th or tomorrow for us, because it's being removed, it's going to be a huge battle. I don't think it should be, but I do think, again, there's going to be all sorts of different ways that sellers are going to want to offer, X percent if it's this amount, or this percent if it goes over, at least in the seller's market. So, and again, then if it goes to a buyer's market, everything's going to change with this. Then everyone's going to be happy to offer out buyer agency compensation. I just think we're coming into this in such a strong seller's market that sellers just think they're king of the castle, right? And they can do this, but so it will change.
All of that, don't you agree though? All of that's going to have to be outlined in the listing agreement. So once it's in there, it's in there, so.
Right. So it could be a graduated type model.
Yes.
Like they do in some markets, like in Ann Arbor, it's a big thing right now to offer out graduated percentages based on the list price.
It is all done
like 3-2.
Yeah. But this would be a little different in that if we get our full asking price, we'll offer 2, and that's kind of along the lines of concessions. I don't know. All these thoughts are running through my head as we're going through this. The more we dig in, the more I think about how things could go, but we don't know.
Yep.
But yeah, we're going to have that same concessions field tomorrow on our MLS. But I think it's just voluntary. It's not a mandatory field. So you wouldn't know if that's not filled out. I don't think it has to be filled out. Well, yours looks like it does though, yes or no. Ours looks different than that. It's not a yes or no question. I got to go back to it. I don't know. I don't know. And we all have current listings that tomorrow we're going to convert to this, right? So
everything that I have been told is as long as you have a listing agreement signed prior to the new date, it still stays in there.
100%.
So, it's whatever new listings you have after tomorrow or whatever.
Or the 17th, technically. Just,
yes.
Well, no,
I just know that
the fields are going away, but it doesn't change how we talk to our sellers about this.
Correct.
Yeah.
My plan is to just resume business as usual as far as to sellers. I've always disclosed, this is what I would like to offer to a buyer's agent. This is why, that is part of the overall commission that, I charge it for my services. And I, knock on wood, have not had any backlash on that yet. I'm sure that I will at some point, but you know,
yeah, you're educating them, right? Because they don't know. They don't even know what this is. So the more
right.
you can
And they
educate
trust
them,
you.
yep, they trust you. 100%.
Yeah. So I think that the more transparent you can be with them and the more you can educate them with facts, that they're going to trust you and they're going to want to do whatever you think is going to get them the most money and the most eyes on their property.
Yeah.
So that is it. That's what I have for you guys. Let's see. Okay, Robin, she said, I had a call today on my listing to show ASAP. Once we discussed the exclusive agreement, he went silent. He wasn't interested in a buyer consult either. I'm discussing with my sellers to be aware and careful if they have people approach them directly to view their property unrepresented and the potential dangers of that. That is definitely a tricky one. You know, what you could do is you could have them sign the unrepresented addendum. So that,
yeah, you
you know,
don't have to represent them just because they called your listing.
correct. But
Nor
then you
would
get
I.
into
That's not
who
dual
shows
agents.
it. Right. And then you're like, well, who shows it? So I've seen a lot of people doing like a la carte services. So they'll say, okay, you want to be unrepresented? That's fine. You have to sign this form. I can still show you the property. It is going to be $50 per showing. And it
Let's
is
charge them to show it. That's even
yeah.
better.
I mean, because then if they're having to see multiple houses and they want you to show it, I mean, they're putting money up for it. So
Oh,
and
you're saying
getting,
if they want to see not only your listing, but they maybe have another home or two they want to see, but they don't want.
correct.
Oh,
Yeah, but if they don't want to be represented, then why are we wasting our time showing them houses if
Then
they
I
don't?
wouldn't show many other homes, only my own listing as an unrepresented
Right.
buyer.
But if they're wanting somebody to open the door, just make sure you're getting paid for it. You know, if you're taking the time to drive there and show them the house, again, I would say it's $50. Understand that I cannot tell you anything about this property because you are not my client, you are a customer.
How, okay,
But can we do that?
question. I have devil's advocate
Yes.
here, or like question on this. If you are charging them, technically, doesn't that money have to go through EXP or through your brokerage?
Yes. You
Yes.
can't get paid.
So
Any other way.
technically, you really can't be paid with them unless you are doing it on the DL, which obviously brokers, if the brokers find out or something happens like that, then that could be a whole nother thing. So you pretty much have to say, you have to, I don't know how we're going to get around that.
My guess is there's probably going to be a form because our director of our MLS said that if we are, that we'll probably be seeing a lot of agents charged for showings. So, but you're right in that if that payment's going to have to go through our broker, how do we handle that? That I don't know yet.
Right. I know on our buyer agency agreement form, we have a long form and we have short form. I have been using the long form since pretty much my first year. And it does talk about compensation on there. And I do put 3% on there, but there are 3 other options as flat rate, as what's the other options? Flat rate. Oh, Julie, do you remember offhand? Sorry, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm totally drawing a blank on this.
There's a retainer fee.
Retainer fee, yes.
There's a retainer fee, a flat rate, a commission.
And then
commission.
hourly is the other one. Yeah, I just looked at the form.
So yeah, so you could do something like that where, but then again, if they don't write an offer with you, you're not
How do you
getting
get paid? Like just Venmo?
unless
mean,
you create
you
unless
could, but
get a retainer and you charge
Yeah.
that retainer up front and they pay that retainer up front almost like an EMD, but again, there's no closing happening. So how is that?
the money flow through your broker for that.
Yeah, how is that even working? I feel like there's still a lot of moving parts, and I think we're going to have a lot of discussion. So what I would love is if, you guys have things that come up, put it in our group, you know, put it in Modern Agent Blueprint. Let's talk about it. Let's see how we can come up and be creative and figure this stuff out together. Nikki, we are over a little bit here. I know we've had a lot of information. Nikki will share these slides with everybody. But again, and Nikki, maybe even put it in the notes on the comments. It's your responsibility as the realtor to know your board and your realtor or your brokerage's rules. Do not follow us. We are not giving legal advice. We are not giving any sort of advice like that. You need to go through your broker and your board to make sure that you are following their compliance so you don't get fined. So, you know, we are giving our opinions on this stuff. This is not necessarily legal advice. So make sure that you are doing what you need to do to CYA, and make sure if you guys, I know our MLS is allowing us to take the ABR course for free, which is the buyer representation course. So if you are able, sorry, my computer's going to die. I need to go get a charger. If your MLS is offering that course out, take it. If you haven't already, it's just more letters behind your name. Take it, be, you know, in the know. Not, you know, this is super important. Sorry, this is a really awkward angle. I'm going to turn it for just a second so I get this thing in here.
You get CE credit for it as well. I think it was 12 CEs.
That's a lot. That's your whole year pretty much right there. And I bet there's legal in there too. So, anyway,
should just be elective. I think it's just 12 elective, but I mean, your CEs roll over if you have more than you need. So it's definitely beneficial. It was a 2-day class, at my MLS, you know, board, but the info was very, very valuable.
Yeah. And I think if I did ABR years ago, it would be really helpful, I think, to redo that class now that we have all of this going on. And for those of you who are with EXP, I don't know how many you are. EXP put out an amazing buyer presentation that you can have that's got forms in it. It's got a lot of information. It's got social media graphics. It's got a whole bunch of stuff. It's a whole, what do they call it, Julie? Like a kit. Yeah, something like that.
Buyer toolkit, buyer agency toolkit.
Yeah, toolkit, that's what they called it. So if you have access to that, make sure you do that. If your brokerage offers something different, I mean, if there's anything of value that you guys feel like you want to share, please share it in our group. We would love that collaboration, especially as we're, you know, stepping into something completely new to us. All right, before we get off here, does anybody have any other questions or any comments about anything? I feel like our brokers have done a really good job getting us a lot of this information and getting us as much as we can and trying to be there for us to kind of help navigate through this stuff. So I do feel like Julie said, the more we talk about it, the more questions we have. So, you know, that's what we have these brokers for. So make sure if you have any questions, don't guess, just reach out because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot next time. All right, everybody. Nikki, anything else? Closing anything?
Nope, that's it. I put the link to the presentation in the group and I will upload the documents to files in the group as well.
All right. Okay, everybody, have an awesome day. Good luck with everything. Let us know if you have any other questions or anything. And we really appreciate you hopping on today. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, girls. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.